basic idea for digital modulation, in particular with bandpass modulation schemes, uh, uh, we would be converting your incoming bit stream, the message, the information source, it will be converted to the digital bits as to the bandpass modulations. So the bit stream, our idea is to convert this bit stream to the symbol stream. So that's the basic idea that we have got. And I don't know why this pen is not working. Okay, yeah. So as we know in our basic analog modulation scheme as well, the modulation involved three basic schemes. One is with respect to variation of the carrier with respect to amplitude, with respect to phase, and with respect to frequency. Of course, we combined the modulation of phase and frequency as angle modulation scheme. Okay, so there were basically two major what you can say two basic modulation schemes in case of analog domain. One was amplitude modulation and angle modulation. In similar sense, we can extend the same theory for digital modulation scheme as well. So here we will either vary the amplitude or phase or frequency of the carrier, or we could vary more than one parameter of the carrier in accordance with the incoming bit stream. So the basic idea is to take the bit stream or take the pulses which you have taken from your line coding schemes and directly modulate using higher frequency carrier. Right. So accordingly, we have got different classifications of modulation. So we can classify the digital modulation schemes into the first. This is the first type of classification. One scheme is with memory, and another scheme is without memory. So obviously, with memory will have the signature of the previous symbols. So the transmitter will wait for the next bit to arrive, based on which it will try to modulate. So we have seen that such kinds of modulation in your CS1 as well. So all your line coding schemes involving polar, unipolar, and Manchester, all are examples of line coding schemes where this is a class of modulation without memory. Okay, so in our band pass modulation schemes, if line codes are low pass modulation schemes, we'll be studying phase shift keying, frequency shift keying, and something known as quadrature amplitude modulation, wherein we'll vary both amplitude and phase of the carrier, and hence it's a hybrid modulator. So which are examples for schemes without memory. So similarly, for schemes with memory, we have seen that the alternate mark inversion will have its polarity based on its previous bit 1. So it will keep on marking at the pulse amplitude in alternate, say plus A and minus A based on the previous bit, and hence this is a scheme of lines coding with memory. So any derivatives out of formed out of AMI can be regarded as the modulation schemes with memory. So here itself, here also in CS2, you would be studying a scheme known as DPSK, which is a differential phase shift keying, which is an example of scheme with memory. Okay, so the bottom ones will all will be covered in your CS2 course. Also, we can classify this modulation in another way. So as band limited modulations and power limited modulations in another perspective. So both band limited and power limited modulations, of course, they'll come with a high bit rate. But in case of band limited modulation, we'll employ only amplitude and phase modulations. Okay, so the band limited in the sense we have the freedom of increasing the bandwidth, but not, the increasing the amplitude of the modulation, but not the bandwidth. So bandwidth is kept constant, but power is variable, where we need to pay more amount of money for the bandwidth. In order to maintain a certain probability of error or quality of service, we have the freedom to vary the power, but not the bandwidth. Okay, that's the case with the amplitude and phase modulation schemes, but we'll keep the frequency fixed. So those are the examples for band limited modulations. So these are particularly coherently demodulated. So what do you mean by coherent demodulation? You have seen a part of that in your CS1 as well. What do you mean by coherent demodulation?
There is a relationship between the signals, like predetermined relationship between the carrier phase.
Yeah, exactly. So the carrier phase is kind of at the receiver is carrier phase at the receiver is same as, or it's in synchronous with the carrier phase which is used in the transmitter. It's kind of stolen phase from the transmitter. So with that information, you'll be able to demodulate. I mean that's meaning of the coherent demodulation. Of course, this decreases the complexity of the receiver, but having, I mean, you need not take it for granted that the transmitter phase will always be known to the receiver. Okay, so we'll understand that the coherent and non-coherent demodulation in a more deeper sense in our course. All the examples of amplitude and phase shift, as phase shift keying techniques, as I had mentioned earlier, will be examples of band limited modulation. Say PAM, which is pulse amplitude modulation, PSK, phase shift keying, and the quadrature amplitude modulation. And there is something known as minimum shift keying, which is known as MSK. So which will all be studying in our course. So there is another class of modulation, limited modulation. So exactly like your band limited, this is also used to increase the bit rate. But here we have freedom only with respect to the power, but not at the price of bandwidth. I mean, you will have to increase bandwidth in order to keep the power fixed. I mean, we can have as much as the power gain as possible. So in a sense, the amplifier, or power amplifier, or the low loss amplifier will be can be forced to operate at its full efficiency, in the sense at its saturation mode, such that we have the freedom of increasing or decreasing the bandwidth in order to meet certain probability of error. Okay, so we'll have to employ only frequency and phase for power limited modulations, because as we know, in both frequency and phase modulations, in general angle modulation schemes will have their amplitudes fixed, so that power will always be fixed. Okay, so these examples will fall under the power limited modulations. All right, so that's what I was mentioning, and this schemes can be demodulated either coherently or incoherently. We will study both transmitter and receiver designs in this course. All your orthogonal signaling schemes, the phase shift keying, even MSK will fall either on band limited or on power limited. You will see the MSK can be regarded as power the phase modulation or frequency modulation. So that's the beauty of this scheme, a minimum shift keying, which we'll take it in this course. All the schemes with memory can also fall under the power limited modulations. So all in all, irrespective of the type of modulation, any modem that you take, the current technology, the modem technologies, or even in mobile itself, will be in need of both type of modulation schemes. You cannot say I can design only the band limited modulation modems or power limited modulation modems. Like your example for simple cable TVs, set-top boxes, which are called as CATVs. So for upstreaming or uploading, it uses some a modulation scheme known as DQPSK, which is differential quadrature phase shift keying for upstream. For downstream, it uses kind of QAM, 64 QAM. Okay, so this could be an example for mixture of modulations that you would be using. Okay, so but apparently this is an example for both band limited modulations, but it need not be. Where in case of power limited modulations, where you have the freedom of bandwidth, probably you can apply these for satellite communications, where you have got plenty of bandwidth to play around. But in case of band limited modulations, obviously all our wireless communication can fall under these examples. So either case, we'll have to have the modems which will perform or the receivers will perform demodulating any of the schemes that is transmitted from the transmitter end. Okay, so what we'll do as the first step of modulation, we will represent the band pass signal So this is a bandpass modulation scheme, and hence we will represent a bandpass signal. The representation is a choice which will be made by us. We'll represent the bandpass signal as we'll assume that there is a freedom to represent bandpass signal. Okay. Then representing the bandpass signal, we can always obtain the basis functions as we have done for a given signal set. Okay, and we'll try to express these bandpass signals, of course, in terms of basis functions. That also was a part of now GSO. And we'll try to draw the constellation diagram with indirectly we'll be identifying the coordinates of the each signal. Once we have drawn the constellation diagram, we will obtain the Euclidean distance between 2 points in constellation, between any 2 points. Say if there are 10 signal points, we will find out the distance among all the pairs. Indirectly, we will be finding out, or we will be looking for the minimum distance between any 2 signals given. Okay, so that will be that we need not obtain, if there are 10, we need not find out all the distances with respect to each signal, but the constellation diagram itself will help us to find out the minimum distance. You'll see that yourself. That we'll call it as d min. Why do you want to calculate d min? The purpose of calculating this minimum distance is that this is the major factor with which we'll be finding out the performance of the transmitter as well as the receiver. So we'll be finding out the probability of error based on this gradient distance, or d min. Indirectly, it also gives the energy of the symbol. You'll also find out the energy of the symbol in the constellation. In fact, if there are more than one symbol, of course, would be the case. Would be finding out the average energy of the symbols in the constellation. Okay, so we will find out the time average energy as well. Later, we'll find out the transmit power spectral density, which will give us the bandwidth occupancy of each modulation scheme. As I have told, our basic idea of geometric representation of the signal is to evaluate the performance with respect to the bit error rate and also the spectral efficiency. Okay, so how efficiently each of these modulation schemes occupy the given bandwidth would be the 2 parameters based on which we'll be evaluating, and hence we'll be calculating the transmit PSD as well, just taking the Fourier transform of it, and ultimately we'll be sketching the transmitter block diagram. So that's the modulation. This is a study, the flow of all modulation schemes that would be covering in our unit 1, the second half of unit 1. Later on, we'll move on to the demodulation scheme, which is the second unit, the first half of the second unit. So demodulation job is to convert these symbols, the received symbols, and observe them for over a bit duration t seconds, and convert them into a number which is called as a test statistics. So because we need to again map it back to the constellation and check whether how well we can demodulate, detect and estimate the received signal. And the demodulation scheme will involve conversion of symbol to a test statistic, and based on the test statistics we will try to map it onto the symbols. Okay, so that's an estimation part. So this detection and estimation part will be the part of your unit 2, and accordingly we will sketch the receiver block diagram. Okay, so with which we'll find out the quality of service of the modulation scheme in terms of the probability of error. Before moving on to all the modulation schemes, I'll try to cover few preliminaries sessions. Okay, probably I'll say some basics. Okay, so idea is to here with respect to bandpass modulation is that given a binary source which keep on emitting the binary symbols 0 and 1. If it is not a digital information source, we know the process to convert the analog signal to digital domain, and given zeros and ones, we need to modulate these binary symbols. So the modulation process involves switching, or I can say the modulation process involves switching or keying, okay, the binary symbols 0 and 1 what we need to switch the carrier. In fact, it's a sinusoidal carrier, okay, because this is a high frequency band pass signal. As I told, the choice will be made by us. The carrier will be, the choice will be for our mathematic analysis would be sinusoidal carrier, the carrier parameters. Okay, the parameters, as I told, it will be amplitude, frequency, or the phase of the carrier will be changing in accordance with the binary symbols which is applied to it. Okay, so let's say that the sinusoidal carrier be represented as C of t, as we have done with analog modulation scheme, as 2 pi f c t, let's say phi c, okay, where AC, FC, and phi c represent amplitude, frequency, and phase respectively. This is the analog domain that we have represented in this fashion. We extend the same assumption for our digital modulation schemes also, but in the digital domain, the only difference would be an extra assumption that we are going to make here. In digital domain, okay, C of t is assumed to have unit energy, okay, because this will help us in mathematical analysis, which is nothing but C square of t would be 1. And we assume that the C of t is measured over a symbol duration. Okay, so and hence in one symbol duration, okay, 0 to say TB. So TB represents the bit duration. Each of the bits we assume will occupy certain amount of time, and hence this C of t will also occupy certain finite duration, as we have assumed that all the signals that we are going to assume are energy signals will occupy or will have finite energy. To have finite energy, they should occupy finite time duration, and hence we can say that this C square of t dt is 1. Okay, C of t we have assumed to be AC cos 2 pi fct plus phi c. So if you try to substitute that, what would we be getting here? Can anybody tell me quickly without substituting the entire equation? So C of t square would be AC square times cos square. Cos square can be decomposed as half of 1 plus cos 2 theta, and integral over 0 to 2b will be what? Square by 2 into TB equal to 1, right? Why is that so? Said FC is equal to 1 over TB, but still this is a carrier frequency. As we know that integral of a cos theta over a duration, over a period 0 to t will always be 0, because it will have as many as positive values as negative values. So the average value of cos or sine function will always be 0. So cos square, when I try to disintegrate it as half times 1 plus cos 2 theta. Okay, so this will be cos 2 theta. This will again the multiplication of theta itself. So integral over a finite duration will make this integral cos 2 theta 0 to t will be 0. What will be left is just half. All right. So with this, AC will be what? AC will be, AC square would be 2 over TB. So AC would be simply root 2 by TB. And therefore, we conclude that our carrier can be represented as, because this will be using in our all modulation schemes. So this should be very clear to you. So AC is now root 2 over TB, and of course, this is cos 2 pi fct plus phi c. So this is the nature of the carrier in a mathematical sense would be representing. Okay, so TB of course is bit duration. how long the bit is going to occupy. So decreasing TB, of course, if you decrease the TB, the bandwidth or the transmission bandwidth will increase in frequency domain, that you are already aware of. Okay, in line coding scheme itself, we tried to find out power spectral density of all those line coding schemes, where we have seen that those rectangular pulses of RZ and RZ schemes will translate to sync, where sync, each of the zero crossings were represented by integral multiple of 1 over TB, and as you decrease TB, the bandwidth or the sync keeps on is widening, and hence you'll be occupying more bandwidth. Okay, so this will be again helpful in analyzing the bandwidth of all the modulation schemes. Anyway, so we'll get back to that whenever it's needed. And of course, we'll be assuming the bandpass signals which we are trying to modulate, and we'll try to represent the modulated wave as B of t times C of t, okay, which for the sake of convenience, we will assume phi c to be 0. Of course, this is not so for phase modulation schemes or frequency modulation schemes, but just for the sake of this discussion, I'll keep this phi c as 0, and this implies the modulated wave can be represented as 2 over TB B of t times cos 2 pi fct. Okay, so with this modulated wave representation, we can try to analyze different various modulation schemes. Okay, so with this, we can also find out transmitted signal energy, since we are represented S of t as transmitted signal, or it's a bandpass modulated signal which is transmitted over the channel, and hence we can find out the energy content in this S of t as well. Okay, where we represent transmitted signal energy as EB, which is nothing but 0 to TB S square of t dt. What will this be? S square of t is 2 over TB, 0 to TB. You can take B of t the square, and of course cos square 2 pi fct dt. And based on previous discussion, the integral of cos square, I mean the sense cos square can be decomposed as 1 plus cos 2 theta by 2, and hence the energy content in the transmitted signal would be simply the half will get cancelled with this 2, and this can be approximated to simply 1 over TB 0 to TB B of t. All right, so with this, what I mean to conclude is that the transmitted signal energy is just scaled energy per bit, where integral 0 to TB B of t whole square dt represents the energy in each bit. So that is divided by TB. So energy in the transmitted signal is just equivalent to the energy content in each bit, and the carrier, as you see, is not affecting anything with respect to the signal energy. Okay, so with this basic idea, we will try to take it forward and apply onto the various bandpass modulation schemes. Okay, so as I told, there are various types of digital modulation, very similar to analog modulation schemes, where in analog we had amplitude and angle modulation, were the two major classes of modulations. Under angle modulation, we in turn had frequency as well as phase modulation, which were part of your CS1. Here, when on similar lines in CS2 course, accordingly we have amplitude, frequency and phase shift keying techniques, where we'll switch the information of bits 0 and 1 in accordingly on the carrier's amplitude, phase and the frequency. Okay, so we'll not begin with amplitude modulation, unlike the case with analog. we'll start with a little simpler case, which seems to be simpler in digital modulation scheme, known as phase modulation. Okay, and we call here this as phase shift keying. Okay, in short, we term it as PSK. Okay, so before understanding the most generic version of phase shift keying, we'll try to build slowly from the simplest case that is possible, and the simplest case that is possible, that would be binary PSK, or in short we call it as BPSK. Okay, so we will study all the modulation schemes based on certain standard parameters. The standard parameters were displayed in the last class itself, where we try to understand the mathematical representation of our bandpass signal, which we will be choosing from. I mean, the choice of bandpass signal will be made by us, and we'll obtain the basis functions of such bandpass signal. And based on this basis function, we'll try to express the bandpass signal as well as try to draw the constellation diagram. In turn, we'll find out the coordinates of each signal in a signal set. And also, we'll try to find out the minimum Euclidean distance between two signal points, which will be helpful in analyzing from the receiver perspective. And also, we'll try to find out the energy of the symbol, or average energy of the symbol in the constellation. And finally, we'll find out the transmit power spectral density, as well as sketch the transmitter as well as the receiver block diagram. Of course, we will be talking about only the modulation or the transmitter part. However, we'll go one step ahead and we'll try to sketch the receiver block diagram also, but it will be just treatment on block diagram from the receiver perspective. We'll try to evaluate the receiver performance in the second unit. Okay, so this would be the flow for all the modulation schemes that we will be discussing. Okay, so based on this idea, if we try to spend little more time on one of the simplest cases that is possible, we will try to extend the same theory on for all the modulation schemes. So that's the idea behind spending little more time on the simplest case. Okay, so the first what we should understand that is, that the incoming bits are to be mapped into symbols. Okay, the incoming bits are to be mapped onto symbols. So in case of simplest case of BPSK, where the input bit stream, where we represent it as Bn, where bit 0 and bit 1 are taken separately and are mapped onto a symbol whose amplitude is root of EB or minus root of EB. Okay, so we'll see what is the implication of saying a plus root EB and minus root EB shortly. But this is the symbol mapping, where the bit 0 is mapped onto some positive value, and bit 1 will be of the same value with opposite sign. Okay, so if EB is 1 for a unit bit energy, this will be simply plus 1 and minus 1. Okay, so with that notion, we will try to represent the modulated signal. Okay, this is the bandpass modulated signal we'll try to represent. Remember, this bandpass modulated signal representation is a choice is purely made by us. Okay, so we can switch over this, where I can represent bit 1 as plus root EB and bit 0 as minus root EB. That's totally fine, but we will try to take one of the representations, and because it's a choice, we have the freedom of choosing the representation of the bandpass modulated signal. Okay, so for every TB, for every bit duration, we will have to have the modulator output based on the incoming bit stream. Okay, so the carrier burst will happen for every bit duration time, where S1 of t, okay, can be represented as earlier. It is just the product modulator B of t times C of t, and we have represented C of t in the earlier session, as I was explaining, where we have represented C of t, the carrier signal, as root tb by cos 2 pi f ct plus phi c. So C of t is represented in this fashion because of having unit energy. So carrying the same information. Now that we have mapped the bits 0 and 1 to plus root tb and minus root tb, accordingly b of t, the bit stream will be mapped. I mean, this signal set will represent the waveform of b of t. And hence, the first signal for bit 0 or bit 1 can be represented as root twice of EB over TV times cos 2 pi FCT plus 0. Phi c is 0. So this is probably for, yeah, we'll try to make a little adjustments here. Probably we can have this for binary 1 and this for binary 0. Anything is fine. Okay, let me take this as binary 0. Okay, and the second waveform S2 of t will be of similar form, but with opposite amplitude, minus root TB over TB cos 2 pi FCT. This will be for binary 1. Okay. All right. So how is this phase modulation? Obviously, we can rewrite this as root 2EB by TB times cos
plus 90.
exactly plus not 90. This is pi, right? Right. So the phase here for binary 0 we can assume to be 0, and for binary 1 we can assume the phase to be pi, and hence this is phase modulation with respect to the incoming binary streams, binary 0 and binary 1. We can switch, I mean we can exchange this S1 and S2 accordingly for binary 1 and 0. In some resources you would have a binary 0 representation as for S2 of t and binary 1 for S1 of t, but doesn't matter with any performance of it, because we know that as long as the basis functions or the given signal sets are same, the performance of those signals will not hamper with geometric representation of the signal. We will see. This T, as I said, these are all finite energy signals. In the sense, they'll occupy finite duration of time and will have finite energies, and where EB is represented as the transmitted signal energy, which I had mentioned in the last session. Okay. So since one is opposite of the other, we call such a pair of signals as antipodal signals. Okay. One is opposite of the others. Okay. Some literature will also mention them as antipodal signals. All right. So next step is to obtain the constellation diagram, for which we need to find out the basis functions. There are only two signals. We need not apply GSO like we had done for few examples in the earlier sessions. But just by looking at the nature of S1 and S2 of t, probably we can easily identify what could be the basis of functions. So what could be the basis function? I mean, if you want to find out anyway, the given signal set will have this form. Say this is S1 of t. Of course, I'll take out the carrier part, and I'll just try to if I eliminate the carrier part, the low pass signals S1 and S2 of t will look something like this, where S1 of t will occupy a certain height of root of 2 EB by TB for a duration of TB seconds, and S2 of t, okay, where S2 of t will be exactly opposite of it, where it will occupy a negative amplitude for the same amount of duration. So if you have such two signal sets, you can apply again the GSO and try to find out the basis functions. But here, how many basis functions would you get in this case? Just by looking at the nature
So
of
only one,
yeah
because they're both complements.
of Yes, exactly. So if one is dependent on another, if they are linearly independent, then definitely you would have, more than one basis function. Since one is opposite of the other, one is, these are not linearly independent. You can construct S2 of t based on S1 of t and vice versa. You would have just one basis function, and that just one basis function can be just root 2 by tb times cos 2 pi fct. All right. So therefore, I can express S1 of t and S2 of t in terms of this basis function. So S1 of t would be naturally, plus root EB times phi of t, and S2 of t would be simply minus root EB phi of t. Okay, so that's what will you will get the S1 of t and S2 of t in terms of your basis function that you have defined. Anyway, root 2 by tb can be eliminated and can be taken as the as a coefficient to express S1 of t, but it depends on how do you represent it. It doesn't matter. It's just scaling factor that would get affected, but not the nature of the constellation. So based on this, you can easily sketch the constellation. Okay, the constellation diagram would look very simple.
Be one-dimensional diagram.
Yeah, this will be simply one dimensional. So this would be 0 just for the reference. So this is phi of t, which is the basis function. So I can have S1 of t at somewhere this point, and exactly on the opposite you will have S2. So if I say this as S1 and S2, so this is located at root EV, and this coordinate is minus root EV. And hence it's a binary phase shift keying. In the sense, you have single bit which represents each symbol. So S1 and S2 are the symbols which are mapped from individual bits, which are located on the in a vector form in this fashion. Okay, so what more we can find out, as we have done in the few cases in the earlier session. We can find out few parameters. Probably you can find out the Euclidean distance. I mean, we need to find out the minimum Euclidean distance among the signal set. But since there are only two symbols here, so the Euclidean distance itself will become d minimum. So the distance between two signals here is obviously twice of root EB, and we can also write energy of each symbol. The energy of each symbol is nothing but the square of the length. So for the each symbol, energy would be simply EB, and we can also find out the average energy of the symbol. So we can also find out average energy of the symbol. Which is equal to EB plus EB by 2, which will be simply again EB itself. Okay, of course this looks very trivial for binary phase shift keying scheme, but this will have the most generalized formula when we go up the order. All right, so we'll also try to sketch the transmitter as well as the receiver and try to find out the PSD, the power spectral density. First, I'll try to sketch the transmitter. Okay, then we will move on to find out the power spectral density. The transmitter block diagram. So how will you implement the simple binary phase shift keying? So you have incoming message bit streams, which needs to be mapped into symbols. So we call this as symbol mapping. So the incoming binary bit streams, which are represented as BN, so which needs to be mapped into symbols. So symbols are represented in our case as AN. All right, so that's what we have done in the earlier case. So this was a symbol in a mapping table. So incoming individual bit is mapped onto certain symbol with amplitude root AB and minus root EB. Then we need to modulate this. First, we need to map these symbols into pulses, which is low pass modulation. Okay, so for that we can call this as something known as pulse shaping function. Okay, so I'll explain that. And once we have got these pulses, we need to band pass modulate it by using simple product modulator, where this is the carrier, which is cos 2 pi FCT, and you would get band pass modulated signal S of t. And this intermediate signal, we'll call this as I of t. I'll explain the way, various blocks here, where SM is in fact the symbol mapper. Okay, and this PSF is your pulse shaping function. Okay, this pulse shaping function in this case is simply, this is NRZ level encoder. Correct. So for bit 0, this will be a plus root EB. For bit 1, it will be minus root EB for over a duration of TB seconds. Like it is kind of a pulse, rectangular pulse. We can utilize NRZ scheme as a simplest case as a pulse shaping function. So accordingly, this can be regarded as some function g of t, which is simply a NRZ function, which we call it as a rectangular function, rect of t by tb. All right. So accordingly, what will be this I of t? This we have written this I of t, which is output of your pulse shaping function, an times g of t minus ntb. So this would be an times g of t minus ntb, where n runs from say minus infinity to infinity, or for certain finite duration of time that can be accordingly changed, and this in turn is minus infinity to infinity an, where g of t minus ntb is rectangular. This can be said as t minus ntb over tb. It's fine. Okay, this is your low pass modulated signal because this is centered around the DC or the frequency 0, where we can take this an to be an amplitude, since I need to multiply this function with root tb root 2 over by tb over times cos 2 pi of ct. Either I can multiply here by root 2 by tb factor, or I can take that root tb 2 over tb onto an itself. So hope that's fine. I have just moved because it's simply a multiplication factor onto the signal. So an can be regarded as simply root 2EB by TB. I'm doing this only because only the difference between I of t and S of t in terms of frequency spectrum is what? What is the difference between frequency spectrum of I of t and S of t?
One is rectangular and the other one, it's low. I of t is low pass and S of t is band pass.
Band pass, that's all. So the frequency spectrum of I of t will be shifted by an amount of Fc, that's all. Okay, so that's all is the difference between I of t and S of t, and hence I'm taking that multiplication factor back into the symbol mapper output as an itself. Otherwise, strictly an should have been for binary 0 should have been plus root eb. I'm just taken root 2 over tb as well into the multiplication factor. Okay, so this would be the nature of the low pass modulated signal, and I can find out its frequency domain, because you have to find out power spectral density, in the sense how much bandwidth this particular modulation scheme will occupy needs to be measured. So I of f, which is simply the Fourier transform of I of t, the Fourier transform of this function that you already know, that it is kind of
Wiener-Khinchin.
Yeah, so this will be applying by Wiener-Khinchin application, where this will be modulus of g of f the whole square, in the sense the pulse shaping function will act as kind of a filter, so whose output spectrum is related with input spectrum, in the way that its input spectrum multiplied by the magnitude square of the function, the impulse function itself. So with that Wiener-Khinchin relation, which is known to us, we can apply that, and we know that Fourier transform of a discrete signal an is a discrete signal for finite duration of second will have certain amplitude, which can be represented as k some k minus infinity to infinity r of k e power minus j2 pi fk tb times the magnitude of g of f whole square. So this is the Fourier transform of your the discrete time domain signal an, where r of k, which you have done in your CS1 also, which is a correlation between symbols, okay, which represents expectation of ak and ak plus n at two different intervals. So we know that, I mean, assuming that the incoming bit streams are independent of each other, in the sense, if you take two bits, we can say that those two bits which are generated from the information source are uncorrelated. So if such is the case of the generation, we can say that this correlation will exist only at k is equal to 0, and this will be 0 for k otherwise. All right. So what is the value of this correlation at k is equal to 0? In the sense, there will be only autocorrelation. So what will be r of 0? Can anybody tell? This will be simply expectation of ak times ak star.
1.
That's an square, right? So the square of the average.
A star.
Yeah. This will be simply 2EB by TV. Okay. Fine. Okay, so this is by assuming the incoming bit streams are independent of each other. And we also know that G of f, which is a Fourier transform of rectangular T over TB, we know that this is Fourier transform of rectangular T by TB, which is a sinc function, which is represented as TB times sinc. Pi of TB or simply FTB could also be the notation of representing sinc function. So this implies I of f would be the multiplication of these two terms. So the first summation will exist only at k is equal to 0. At k is equal to 0, exponential 0, which is 1, and hence this will be twice of EB by TB times the magnitude of this G of f the whole square, which will be TB square times sinc square FTB. So therefore, the I of f would be simply 2 TB times TB times sinc square FTB. Okay, but we are trying to find out the power spectral density. Okay, so we know that power spectral density is given as the power spectrum over over the area. The area here is one dimensional over one bit duration. So this will be PSD would be simply I of f over TB, and hence the transmit power spectral density by TB will give us simply twice of TB times sinc square FTB. So this is power spectral density for BPSK. All right. So what is the power spectral density of the? This is the power spectral density of the low pass modulated signal. As I said, the power spectral density of modulated signal will be simply shifted by an amount of FC. Okay, so you can simulate this. So whoever has got simulation of BPSK can do this part, where the left hand side is, let's zoom this a bit. Okay, so this is the baseband PSD. As you can see, this is sync square. Sync will have both positive and negative, which is the diminishing amplitude. Sync square will have all the positive spectrums, but this is plotted on dB watts per hertz against the frequency, and hence you will have on the y-axis you have got minus 50 dB watt minus up to minus 20 dB watt. That doesn't mean that it's a negative value. The power will be in the decimal value less than 1 milliwatt or something lower than that, and hence the y-axis seems to be of negative values, but it is not. So this is the transmit PSD in baseband, which we have written as a mathematical function right now, and your pass band or band pass power spectral density is just the scaled version of it by shifting by n amount. Here the FC is taken to be around 1.5 kilohertz. You can take different values of FC to find out the actual spectrum of your band pass scheme, and hence a band pass modulated BPSK scheme. And hence you can find out the bandwidth occupancy as well. I mean, the major lobe is exists between around 1000 to 2000 hertz, and hence you can also calculate the bandwidth of the power spectrum. I mean, based on the band pass power spectral density. Okay, yeah, this is generated based on your MATLAB simulation. All right, so what we are left with here for BPSK is that just for sake of completion, we'll also sketch the receiver block diagram, but we'll not discuss much in detail about the receiver performance, but we'll try to just sketch the block diagram and leave it at that point. And whatever is required for its analysis will be taken in the unit 2. Before moving on to receiver, you can note one point that we can have an alternate choice for phi c. That's what the carrier phase. Correct. So here we have taken phi c to be either 0 or pi. So 0 for binary 1 and binary 0 and pi for binary 1, or vice versa. But we can as well have the carrier phase to be modulated with respect to the binary bit stream as pi by 2 or minus pi by 2. Right? How would that constellation would look like? So for this choice of carrier phase, that's what I was trying to mention. The nature of the choosing band pass modulated signal is purely depends on the individual. You can also have this choice of the carrier. So for that case, the binary probably S1 would be lying here, and S2 would be, still this is the one-dimensional constellation itself, but your the basis function still be phi of t, but with the choice of carrier phase to be pi by 2 and minus pi by 2, you can plot on the y-axis, which is plus 90 degree and minus 90 degree with respect to the reference basis function. Okay, so whoever has got BPSK simulation, you would find the sketching of the BPSK modulated signal in time domain for both the cases, and you'll see you see the difference between the generation between these two choices for phi c, and you should also conclude that which choice will be performing better than the other. Okay, so I will leave that discussion once anyone has got the simulation of BPSK, will simulate and try to discuss. I will put forth that point during that time. Okay. All right. So we'll complete this with receiver block. Okay. So just to give an idea what will be receiver, the receiver would be doing. So it receives the BPSK signal. Of course, this will be corrupted by the noise in the channel. You will implement the product modulator at the front end, which is multiplied by cos 2 pi FCT, and will pass through the low pass filter, because this product modulator, this mixer will have its non-linearities, so it may generate certain harmonics. So we are trying to eliminate the higher order of frequencies. We'll implement this low pass filter, and this low pass filter passes only the the frequencies centered around the zero. And with that, we'll try to take sample at every integer multiple of bit duration, where I is an integer 0, 1, 2, so on. With that, we'll have some value. I mean, you'll get one sample value based on this, whether it could be an average, or it could be the taking the sample at its midpoint, or it is called a center point sampling, or it may be called as average sample value. Whatever could be the test statistic that gets generated by switching at TITB, we will make a decision based on it. Okay, so this is your decision making device. Okay, so this decision making will have certain information about the threshold. Okay, so what is the threshold here? Because if you can see the constellation here, so S1 and S2 are the transmitted symbols. These are to be received by the receiver, but not in this form because of the corruption in the channel. S1 probably would have shifted somewhere here, S2 would have been shifted somewhere here. So I'll try to sketch that just to give an idea about the importance of this geometric representation of the signals. Okay, for the case of the receiver, okay, due to noise, the S1 will no more be located here. It will be, say, somewhere shifted to this point, and S2 probably shifted somewhere at this point. I'm just taking one example, it could be anywhere. Nevertheless, the receiver can still perform the demodulation or the estimation process, and demodulate faithfully. So what could be the threshold for them to be demodulated correctly?
The y-axis.
Yeah, the y-axis would be the reference here. This would be the threshold. So whatever value that you would get after sampling at individual bit duration, whatever the value, if it is on the right, you will map it onto symbol S1. Whatever the value you would be getting on the left, you would be mapping onto the symbol S2. Okay, for if it is so corrupted, if the channel is perturbed by such an heavy noise, you may have the S1 to be shifting over to the region on the left. In that case, you would be wrongly predicting the symbol, and that incurs certain error in the detection, and we call such error as probability of error, which is the performance of the receiver itself. And BPSK, as you can see, S1 and S2 are the symbols which are farthest, they are apart as the maximum possible way. Okay, so they are apart by an amount of 180 degree, and that is the maximum separation that is possible. Okay, for higher order, the symbols will be closer than this. Okay, so this will have highest amount of performance. However, the drawback of BPSK scheme would be you are mapping individual bit into a symbol, so the bit rate is very less. Okay, that would be the discussion. Note that here, although we are not going in detail about the receiver at this point, this is a case with coherent detection, where we have stolen the information of the phase of the carrier from the transmitter. Okay, so by knowing the carrier phase, we will be able to demodulate and detect and estimate the transmitted symbol. Okay, so this is an example of a coherent detector. Okay, that's what I was talking about, the classification of the modulation schemes earlier, where the phase shift keying techniques all would require a coherent detection scheme, a coherent detector at the receiver. Okay, that's moving ahead with higher order of PSK. We'll try to discuss quadrature PSK. In short, it is termed as QPSK. Okay, so here each modulated carrier pulse will transmit 2 bits at a time. Okay, so 2 bits of information will be represented by a symbol. Okay, will be represented by a symbol. So this will be a symbol mapping. So this symbol mapping could be BN, AN. So we'll group 2 bits 0, 0, 0, 1. You can apply your gray coding scheme as well. That depends totally on how you encode it. So 0, 0 will be some symbol S1, some symbol S2, S3, and S4. Okay, so we'll represent the band pass modulated signal. Okay, the transmitted band pass signal can be mathematically be represented now for QPSK as Si of t. Okay, in general, S1, S2, S3, S4 can be regarded as Si of t, which is 2 root E by t, okay, times cos of 2 pi fct, okay, plus some phase, which the information of the bit is contained in the phase now because of this phase modulation scheme. The phase will keep on vary depending on what bit stream that we are representing, and this I will vary as is, sorry, it's not 0. This will take values of 1 to 4. So this will be 1, 2, 3, and 4. And of course, the t will have variation between 0 to t. And here, energy of each symbol. Okay, we'll call this as symbol energy and symbol duration. Symbol duration. So symbol energy, as you can see, what is the symbol energy here? Because there are 2 bits here. So unlike if we compare with respect to the BPSK scheme, so individual bit had an energy of EB. Since the 2 bits will form a symbol, so we'll have twice the as energy of individual bit. Okay, so ES would be twice of EB. Naturally, the symbol duration will also be twice the duration of individual bit. Okay, so that's the basic representation of this. As you can see, for I is equal to 1, so what would the phase of band pass modulated signal? 0. For I is equal to 2, this would be pi by 2. For I is equal to 3, this would be 3 pi by 2. And for I is equal to 4, for I is equal to 3, this will be pi. And for I is equal to 4, that would be 3 pi by 2. We'll try to represent that in constellation diagram. Before that, we need to proceed. We'll try to eliminate this step probably as we move ahead. But for time being, we'll try to find out the basis functions. Later, these basis functions will become very obvious. How do you obtain the basis function? If you see carefully, the SI of t, the nature of SI of t is root 2s by ts. Cos, it's of the form of cos a plus b. I can expand that as cos a times cos b, which is pi by 2 times I minus 1, minus root 2 es by ts times sine 2 pi fct times sine of pi by 2 I minus 1. Okay, now can you tell me how many basis functions and what are they? Okay, so the basis,
we need 2.
Yeah, you would be needing 2. So phi 1
We can
of
have
t,
one of them as cos and one of them cos of 2 pi fct and the other one as cos of pi by 2 into I minus 1, and then use pi by 2 shift to write the other.
exactly. The one of the basis function would be very similar to the previous one, where it is root 2 over ts times cos 2 pi fct, and other basis function would be 2 over ts times sine of 2 pi fct. Okay, so this will be the two-dimensional constellation. So if we try to sketch the constellation, it will look something like this. This is phi 1, so your phi 2, okay, and your functions, yeah, your the symbols. This is S1. As you can see, for S1, we say it as, I is equal to 1. For S2, I has 2, and 3 and 4 for S3 and S4. As I was explaining, for I is equal to 1, so the phase would be 0, in the sense this will be lying along the the basis function phi 1 itself. For I is equal to 2, what will happen? For I is equal to 2, it will be cos of 2 pi fct plus pi, in the sense, cos of 2 pi fct plus pi by 2 for I is equal to 2. And from the basis function cos 2 pi fct, this will be lying 90 degree from that, or in other words, it will be lying along the basis function phi 2. So this would be the location of S2, and similarly, this would be the location of S3, and somewhere here you would have S4. Okay, so at what distances these all will be located from origin?
Root 2 ES by TS.
Yeah, but this, since we have taken that root 2 over TS into the basis function, we'll have just root ES, the location along the phi 1 and phi 2. Okay, this will be TS. This will be minus root ES. This will be minus root ES. Okay, so as you can see, these are equidistant from the origin. So if I try to, connect these dots, these all will be located along a circle. Okay, so these all will be along the circumference of the circle. So that's what will be your QPSK. And according to the other parameters like we discussed in BPSK, we can try to find out the energy of each symbol. What is the energy of each symbol here? Energy of each symbol is the square of the length of the vector. Here in this case is ES.
Yes.
Yeah,
2 EB.
2 EB, that's correct. And average energy would be, I can say symbol average energy would be
Also ES.
ES, that's correct. And what would be the minimum Euclidean distance?
Root 2 ES.
Yeah, root 2 ES. This distance between S1 and S2 will give you the minimum distance between each symbol. And those distances are equal between the pairs of S2 and S3 and S3 and S4 and S4 and S1. All other, I mean, you can also find out other geometrical distances like the distance between S1 and S3, but that will be larger than the minimum Euclid distance, which is root 2 ES. Okay, so that's the reason this would be an important parameter as we go ahead with the receiver. I repeat that. All right, so transmitter, block diagram can be, sketched very similar to that, similar to the BPS.
Sir, I had a doubt over here.
Okay.
Why don't we consider root ES also in the basis function? It would make calculations much easier, right? After the going down to the minimum Euclidean distance and all. Because
Yeah,
if we consider ES, it means.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. I understand your doubt, but we usually, have said that the square of the length of the vectors will represent the energy of the each symbol. Correct.
Okay, so we try to term it under energy itself.
Yes, yes. So here the length of this vector S1 is root ES. The square of it is ES, which is the energy of the symbol, which makes more sense. Okay. If I had taken that ES into the root of of phi 1 and phi 2 itself, this would have been simply 1. So that's also fine, but that doesn't have the meaning of saying the square of the norm of the vector is the is energy of the symbol. That's the only reason to take that root es outside this phi1 and phi2 and represent in this fashion. Okay, yeah, okay. The transmitter block diagram, for QPSK, as you may predict, it is combination of two BPSK schemes, correct? So two BPSK can be clubbed together to form QPSK, because PPSK will map individual bits. So you take two bits at a time and try to map it into a symbol. That can also be done. I'll try to save a little time here to show you the transmitter block diagram of this would be the transmitter block diagram. As you can see, the incoming binary data will be splitted into even and odd bits. So this is a serial to parallel converter. In other words, this is a demultiplexer. So this demultiplexer will convert the serial into parallel. So on the upper path, you'll have only the even bits, and in the downward path, you'll have only the odd bits. So this will be, the upper path will be BPSK, the lower path will again be BPSK, and as you know, the BPSK will consist of symbol mapping and the pulse shaping filter or pulse shaping function, followed by a product modulator. So on the upper path, the product modulator will be will have the carrier cos 2 pi f ct, and the lower path it will be multiplied by the quadrature version of it, which is sin 2 pi f ct. That's all would be the difference between the product modulator multiples. And you'll club those back, or you'll mix them back with and subtract them back, because in the mathematical way we have expanded cos a plus b, which is cos a cos b minus sin a sin b. So you'll have to subtract those two to determine the final QPSK modulated signal. Okay, so this would be the transmitter part. On the receiver as well, you would incur the same. So you will you would have a product modulator and low pass filter, followed by a sampler and a decision making device on the upper path, as well as on the lower path separately for the even and or you can demux again the incoming QPSK signal into two parts and try to reconstruct the original signal back. And also we also I had shown that far spectral density of QPSK scheme in general can be written as 2es sync square FTS, which is similar to your BPSK scheme. Okay, what we have calculated, which is very similar to BPSK scheme, twice of bit energy times sync square of FTB. So, but only the difference would be ES represents the symbol energy here. It's not the bit energy, where each symbol is made up of 2 bits, and hence ES is twice of EB, and each symbol duration will occupy twice of each bit duration. Okay, so of course the bandpass modulated QPSK scheme will lie around the carrier frequency FC. Instead of having this phase, what I have taken here as pi by 2 I minus 1, we could have had alternate angle as well here. So, or we would have had this theta I, if I call for QPSK scheme, we could
pi by 4 into 2i plus 1.
Yeah, it's 2i minus 1. So this can be regarded.
Yeah, for those I values, yes.
Yes, yes. So this scheme could have been called as pi by 4 QPSK, because this will be pi by 4 shifted version of the original scheme. So if I try to draw its constellation, this would look something like this. So for pi by 4 QPSK, okay, just for the sake of completion, I'm doing this. This would have had, okay, again, this is a 2-dimensional constellation. Okay, so this would be the 4 symbols for it: S1, S2, S3, and S4. Okay, this would serve with more carrier synchronization, which will be dealt when we discuss the receiver. But this, as of now, you can just think this scheme as an an alternate version of the original QPSK signal, which is pi by 4 shifted version of it. We can have another variant of this QPSK called as OQPSK, okay, which is called as offset QPSK. Okay, the basic reason of having another variation of this QPSK is that both QPSK and pi by 4 QPSK, so if I say this call as 00, 01, 11, and 10, if I adopt gray coding, whenever there is, say, the incoming bit stream is in this fashion, say 00, 11, then 10, 01, and so on. As you can see, QPSK groups 2 bits at a time, and accordingly the carrier will be the phase of the carrier will be keeps on changing. So if you carefully observe, this is S1, and this is S3, and this is S4, and this is symbol S2. In changing phase of the carrier from S1 to S3, what is the amount of phase change that's happening?
180 degrees.
Yeah, that is pi here. And from S3 to S4, how much
90
is that?
degrees.
90 degree, that's pi by 2. And again from S4 to S2, I can call this as minus.
180 degrees.
Yeah, plus pi or minus pi. So there is constant changing of the phase. I mean, the maximum phase change that is happening is pi there. I mean, pi by 2 plus or minus pi by 2 or plus or minus pi. So you know that carrier is cosine here. So cosine for a couple of cycles it will stop here, and if you want to change its phase to pi or minus pi, it has to start from here, right? So for next symbol set, it has to, I mean, the carrier will be will look like this. So you can see that it's a discontinuity between each symbol set. Okay, so this discontinuities will affect the filter in the receiver. So this will incur some non-linearities, and probably some harmonics will be generated, may seep through the filter and cause some distortion. So in order to reduce this abrupt change in the phase, so since the maximum phase change is plus or minus pi, the offset QPSK is designed in such a way that the phase, it reduces the phase transition between successive symbols. Okay, so this is done as I had shown as a block diagram of generation of QPSK. You had I phase and you had Q phase. I phase had the symbol of all even symbols. Okay, so the offset QPSK, when you try to just really look into the transmitter block diagram of the original QPSK, it had combination of I and Q, both the upper path and the bottom path belong to BPSK signaling scheme. Upper path had only the even terms, and the lower path had only odd terms, and accordingly you try to modulate separately and then try to add them. In this scheme, if you can delay this the odd symbols, which is represented by A2 and plus 1, if it is delayed by 1 bit duration, okay, if it is delayed by 1 bit duration, you can see that there would be a great change of phase transition when you compare with QPSK. So you can reduce this plus or minus pi or plus or minus pi by 2 phase transitions can be reduced to either 0 degrees or simply to plus or minus pi by 2. So the jumps of plus or minus pi can be reduced to a smaller phase transition, and you can reduce the non-linearity in case of OQPSK. Of course, the detailed the theory is not is included in your syllabus. However, I have given as an assignment part. Then that time we'll try to dig more deeper into it. Okay, but this will also form a foundation for the minimum shift gain or MSK. Okay, so in MSK also we'll try to delay one of the bits by certain amount, such that we'll try to reduce or try to increase the spectral efficiency. Okay, well, I'll discuss when we try to understand MSK. All right, so these were the parts of the last session that we were supposed to cover. Moving ahead with more generalized phase modulation scheme for M Array PSK, or in short, it is also termed as MPSK. Okay, or both BPSK and QPSK will be special forms of this MPSK. When M is 2, it will be BPSK, and M is 4, that will be QPSK. And modulated signal in general. Okay, so what I mean by this M Array PSK, first I'll try to address that part. Then we'll move on to modulated, signal structure. Okay, so what I mean by this is, in BPSK, this is 1 bit per symbol, correct? In QPSK, we represented 2 bits per symbol. Similarly, we can extend this theory to, in general, to MPSK, say k bits grouped together to represent each symbol. And hence this M is nothing but, what will happen? Or
2 per k.
Yeah, M will be 2 per k, or k will be log base to M. With this idea, we'll try to represent the bandpass modulated signal for MPSK scheme in this fashion. Si of t in general is represented as root t es. So here onwards, I'll be representing it as e suffix s and ts to represent energy of the symbol. It's not the energy of the bit now, right? So energy of the symbol and symbol duration times cos of 2 pi fct plus theta I, right? So theta I, as we know, that in general, this varies from I1 to up to say M levels. So this theta I is represented as 2 pi over M times I minus 1. Okay, so as I told, E, S and Ts represent the energy of the symbol and symbol duration. Just give me a second, I'm not able to scroll it down. Okay. All right. So with this, you can see yourself how BPSK and QPSK are formed for M is equal to 4 and M is equal to and M is equal to 4 accordingly. Okay. So with that, I can write ES, which is the energy of the symbol. Now k bits are grouped together, and the energy of each symbol is k times of energy of each bit, and k that we know, we have written it as log EB times log M base 2. Similarly, the symbol duration TS is also k times TB, and similar to that, this is TB times log M base 2. So how many basis functions would you require for this? For BPSK, you need 1 basis function. For QPSK, you need 2 basis functions. So how many basis functions are required for M Array PSK?
M.
M?
M basis functions.
Think over it. Think over it again.
Oh wait, it would be 2 itself. It would not change.
Exactly. It would be 2, right? So if you expand this cos of A plus B, you would again get cos A, cos B minus sin A, sin B. You just need 2 basis functions, very similar to your QPSK. So for any M, except for M is equal to 2, you would need, the constellation will be 2-dimensional. Or in other words, there would be 2 basis functions for M array scheme. So phi 1 of t would be simply root 2 over t cos 2 pi fct, and then phi 2 of t.
So root 2 over TS, right?
Yeah, 2s ts. Okay. Sine 2 pi fct. Okay, so the constellation can also be drawn for such scheme. So we'll take one example and try to draw it. Say for m is equal to 8. Say probably this is 8 array PSK. I'll try to draw this. Let's see. Yeah, this is one basis function. So with that, this is your phi 1 of t. This is your phi 2 of t. All your 8 symbols would be occupying on the circumference of the circle. Say that if I say this is 8, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. It's so S12. Okay, if I call this as S1, probably this will be S2, and so on up to S8. Okay, and what is the radius of this circle? What is the radius of the circle?
Will be the square root of energy of each of the symbols.
Yes, yes. So this will be simply energy of each symbol root ES. All are equi-energy symbols. Okay, so with this we can calculate few parameters that we had done for QPSK as well. So let's try to find out the Euclidean distance, which is a minimum distance that is possible. So how will you calculate the D minimum here? So D minimum would be the distance between the adjacent symbols here, right? So in case of QPSK, it was root of twice of ES, if you can recollect. But for MRE PSK, we'll try to address that. If I pick this S1 and S2 are two vertices of a triangle, I'll try to draw that triangle and then calculate the minimum. Okay, so here is say symbol S1, here is a symbol S2, and this is my origin O. The distances OS1 and OS2, these are the radius of the circle itself, which is root of ES and root of ES. And I'll try to draw a perpendicular bisector, okay, from the origin onto this edge S1, S2. Okay, so this will be now, if I call the distance between S1 and S2 as D minimum, and if I call this as say something like P, okay, now I can calculate the D minimum based on that simple triangular, the simple using trigonometric relation. So what is this angle?
So it is 0.765 into root ES.
Okay, we'll calculate because it should depend on M as well, right? Because we are talking about I mean, I'm not talking about the 8 array PSK.
Correct.
It should be dependent on the value of M, which is the level of MRE. Okay, so in general, if I want to talk, if this is a perpendicular bisector as well as this an isosceles triangle, these angles will also be equal. And what would be this angle? Can anybody tell?
Pi by M.
Is it right?
So
right?
between S1 and S2, it will be 2 pi by M.
Correct.
So half that is pi by M.
Correct. So yeah, right. So this would be pi by M. You can check yourself. Say for M is equal to 1. It was when it was BPSK. It was just when it was a case of BPSK, the angle separation between them was the highest, which was 180 degree. And when there were 4 symbols in the system, you could have had the constellation looked like in this fashion. Yeah, the total angle, as I was trying to tell, the total angle which is darkened, the total angle is 2 pi m, 2 by m, sorry. Yeah, for m is equal to 2 for BPSK case, the angle separation was if I call what to say alpha, say the alpha was 5, say for m is equal to 4 in case of QPSK signal, so this was
90, 5/2.
yeah 5/2 and so on. So the total angle between S1 and S2 centered at the origin is 2 pi over m, and if I take just one angle, half of it, which is pi by m, now I can write the trigonometric relation between the sides. If I take sine of it, so sine pi by m would be what? Sine of that is
B min
PS2.
by 2
Yeah,
divided by rho ds.
yeah, that would be rho ds. So this implies the minimum distance between each symbol. I mean, minimum distance in M-Array-PSK constellation is given as twice of root ES times sine of pi over m. Okay. Yeah. So we can substitute based on the level of groupings that you are doing for PSK. Similarly, we can also calculate average energy per symbol. Okay, average energy per symbol is represented as average S, as there are
Yes.
so there are m symbols, so this all are symbol and energy symbols, and this will go up to say m times, and it's rightly it's energy of the each symbol itself. So therefore, we can also write, because we'll try to compare with other signaling scheme after we discuss all the modulation schemes.
So for all phase shift keying types, average energy would be the same as a symbol. I think
Yes,
only for amplitude kind of modulations it would
yes,
change.
yes, that's
Yes.
perfectly right. Okay. Why is it so? Because we are not playing around with the amplitude for
The
phase
amplitude.
shifting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the envelope of the modulation scheme would be constant. Okay. Yeah. So average energy per bit on the similar sense, we call it as average energy per bit. So that would be the average energy of the symbol by k times of, I mean, by k, because of the k groupings, and we can say this as an average symbol energy by log m base 2. All right, so we'll conclude this with the last part of the parameter as power spectral density. So it's very similar. We'll need not again apply your Wiener-Khinchin theorem that we did for BPSK. We can extend the same theory for this, and we can general expression for M-Array PSK would be simply twice of energy of the symbol times sinc square of FTS. So this was similar with respect to QPSK, where ES was twice of EB, TS was twice of TB, and here for M-Array PSK, ES would be simply K times EB and TS is K times TB. Okay, and we can also find out what you can say the bandwidth of M-Array PSK based on power spectral density, because we know that the sinc square function will have its minima and maxima with a diminishing maxima. So if we can take the major lobe, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So sinc
We
square,
1 over KTB.
yeah, exactly. So this will be sinc square function. Okay, so if this is say the center of it, yeah, if I take this as 0, the first crossover of the sinc square function will happen at 1 over TS or at Fs, okay? And hence the channel bandwidth for M-Array PSK would be, I can represent it as B, that is twice of F, which is twice of TS, and we know that TS is K times TB, and hence the bandwidth required would be 2 divided by TB times log m base 2. Or sometimes we represent this in terms of bit rate, where it is represented as 2RB by log m base 2, where RB is 1 over TB. Okay. So with this, bandwidth of the requirement of the bandwidth for memory signals, we can find out an important parameter that I was mentioning, called as spectral efficiency. Right now, this doesn't have its meaning at this point, or we may not appreciate its importance, but just have the definition at this point, and probably we'll try to find out what would be the spectral efficiency for various modulation schemes. Then you'd be able to appreciate the importance of this parameter. Well, overall, the spectral efficiency means that it is the ratio of the bit rate over the given bandwidth. What is the bit rate, say, for a given channel bandwidth? If you can have more bit rates, or if you can accumulate more bits per symbol, or if the symbol representation is represented by more number of bits grouped, then probably will have more spectral efficiency. So for M-RE-PSK, so this is simply log m base 2 over 2. Okay, so you can tabulate this for various values of m, and also can find out how spectral efficiency increases as the level of m increases. Okay, say for example, you can say that you can compare for say for 8 PSK and say for 32 PSK. You can compare spectral efficiency for these two schemes. Say for 8 RE-PSK, m is 8, and this implies what will be rho? Can anybody calculate and let me know?
3 by 2 is 1.5.
Yeah, that's 1.5. Say for 32, it's 5 by 2, correct?
3.
Yeah.
5, no.
6, yeah, that's correct. 32 is 5, right? Yeah, 5 by 2 is 2.5.
5 by 2. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So as m increases, as the number of levels increase, we see that the spectral efficiency more efficiently you will be utilizing the given spectrum. That's what is meant by the spectral efficiency factor. We look at this factor again and again.